So welcome to This Cycling Life, and today we have another episode with Dr. Josh Miller, and we're going to be talking today about a topic which most people are, I guess, not even conscious of, and that's the question of what time of the day is the optimal time to be doing our training. So Josh, welcome to you. And of course, a big day because we're recording this actually on the 3rd of November, which is, of course, is election day in the US. So how are you feeling, Josh, with all the events surrounding you?
Fingers crossed. We got our fingers crossed here in the States. We're looking for hopefully some very positive news, hopefully in the next few days. But otherwise, still staying indoors with COVID, teaching from home. Everything's going well here. But I look forward to this question that we're going to address today.
No, let's wait. We're waiting with bated breath here in in Europe, Josh, and I'm sure Australia and around the rest of the world, because what happens, of course, today impacts the world in a big way. So, Josh, why don't we jump right in? I'm really curious about this question of like when should be doing our training, because some people say that it's best to do your training in the morning. Some people say late afternoon. Some people say evening. Is there an optimal time for cyclists to be actually scheduling their training? And if so, why might that be?
I've scoured a lot of the literature over the last few days, getting ready for this question. And honestly, there really isn't an optimal time. I think part of it is going to depend upon you as the cyclist and what is your schedule. We think about it when we wake up in the morning. We think we can probably get into a little bit more of that fat burning zone, especially overnight. We've exhausted some of those glycogen stores. We're ready to get into a little bit of going on. So we might actually have that availability to get into some losing weight in the morning. People are very much more potentially productive in the morning. So maybe getting that exercise training, that ride in the morning will definitely may help with some better mental health, some productivity in your job. Then you have those individuals that, maybe need that pep in the afternoon. And they found that exercise might help give you that kick in the, shall we say, the kick in the pants during that afternoon. And they actually also demonstrated that you actually become a little bit more caloric efficient. You actually burn maybe about 10% more calories, maybe midday.
And why is that? Is that got something to do with your metabolism or resting heart rate being higher, or what's behind that?
It's probably geared a little bit more towards maybe some release of hormones. When we think about those metabolic hormones, sometimes we think about, our thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. They may be a little bit more released during that period of time, or even the catecholamines like epinephrine and norepinephrine kind of have this diurnal pattern. So we might actually see a peak in the morning and another peak in the evening. So it just might be that, some people benefit a little bit more from the afternoon, but in the evenings might be a little bit different. There is here in the States, we do a lot of shift working. So we might see people actually working, let's say from, 9 o'clock in the evening to 5 o'clock in the morning. And that could actually affect the circadian rhythm, the pattern of hormonal release. But if you're, say, a 9 to 5 guy or gal, and you go out and train, let's say at 6 o'clock in the evening, the thought might be that it could actually interfere with your sleeping. But if you probably follow proper sleep hygiene, it probably won't affect your sleeping all that well. One other benefit is it might help with weight loss also, because it actually lowers the release of a hormone called ghrelin, which actually helps with weight loss. So I think the big answer really comes down to what type of person are you, and really how does it fit into your schedule in that sense? Do you want to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get a little breakfast in, and then train by 5:30? Or do you want to wake up at 7 and get ready to go to work at 8 kind of thing? So yeah. I think it just really depends a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned the psychological stuff because, I'm kind of as part of my routine, because I'm fortunate enough not to have a long commute to work. I often train first thing in the morning. I wake up, have my coffee, maybe a little bit of breakfast, but often I do the rides fasted, and I'll do my 45 minutes or an hour of just easy riding in the morning. But what I find with that is actually it really motivates me. It's kind of like I feel pleased with myself because I've started the day in a positive way. And what I find then is that often the day that follows is much more purposeful, much more structured. Did you come across anything related to that in the literature? Not just the physiological benefits, but what it does for you from a mental perspective?
I didn't really see anything along that line. I looked more at the exercise, kind of what's going on in the system. But I'm a morning person. 5 o'clock rolls around here and I'm up 5:30 or so. I like having that, shall we say, that check off, get that ride in. It allows me to get my day going, and then I can actually check that off. And it actually helps me do a mental check for what's going on the day. What do I need to accomplish? How much do I need to prep for my class this afternoon? What's going on and so forth. And it kind of helps to give you that view of everything for the day is available in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for if people, because you mentioned the benefits, like particularly with fat burning and stuff in the afternoon. I mean, if you were recommending like a professional athlete or someone who had much more flexibility with the way that they train, would you I mean, how would you recommend them to maybe structure their training over the course of the day? Because there's also the possibility, for someone like what I do a lot is I do split training. I'll wake up, I'll do a session in the morning, maybe an hour, easy, tempo, zone 1 and 2. And then later on in the afternoon, I'll actually do my intervals or more intensive stuff. Because often I find actually, and this is just again from me, from experience, I will often see that I'm able to produce just a little bit more power often in the afternoons than I can in the morning. And I don't know why that is. But the other thing is, what I'll often do, because I'm self-employed, I have a bit of flexibility, is often I take a little nap after lunch. And I know quite a lot of professional athletes. And I see a lot of these professional athletes also training in this way. They go out in the morning, they do a few hours, they come home, have their lunch, they have a nap, and then they'll do another session often later in the afternoon. What would be your recommendations for the ideal or optimal?
I think when you look at that, it's really, waking up in the morning, definitely helping to replenish those stores of micronutrients, glucose, especially that we've, kind of broken down overnight. Maybe getting into some training early in the morning, maybe some endurance training, maybe some long miles based, depending upon what's going on with the season. And then there's actually been some literature that's actually demonstrated that if you look at concurrent training, endurance training, and strength training, there is a benefit in performing more of your strength training in the evening. They've kind of actually shown in some of the literature that there is an increase in muscle mass. So that kind of might address that maybe later in the day, you might actually be able to generate a little bit more peak power output due to this avenue. What we've also find is that if you think about the body temperature and resting heart rate, what really happens is as we're sleeping, kind of our temperature comes down, our heart rate comes down based upon the nervous system, especially the parasympathetic nervous system with heart rate, because its job is to help us restore, replenish, relax, get us back to that nice homeostasis. So we see that heart rate's brought down pretty nicely. And depending upon how well trained you are, we can see heart rates 38, 35, mid 40s, depending upon how trained you are. You wake up in the morning, your resting heart's is nice and low. We need to basically kind of help get that heart rate response up. And that actually happens throughout the day. We'll see targeted periods of time. Some research has actually looked at testing at 8 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock midday, 1600 or 4 o'clock, and then 20 or 8 o'clock in the evening. And what they showed is that body temperature increased throughout the day, as well as kind of a resting heart rate did increase a little bit also. Yeah. So thinking about preparing the body for exercise, definitely need to increase body temperature. We're going to increase heart rate because we need to now pump that blood, get that oxygen to the muscle. We're releasing hormones that will help to get the body ready to release, glucose or free fatty acids into the bloodstream to get to the muscles, so we can use it as energy. So we might see some extra added benefits. So the idea of maybe doing some training in the morning or late morning, followed by kind of that recovery period where you can actually get some rest in, relax, maybe a little massage or something if you have that opportunity, get a little nap, and then maybe a little meal afterwards, and then get an afternoon workout would definitely be advantageous in that, depending upon, again, the season and what your goals are for what's going on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read up on some stuff. I was also looking at a few articles recently that actually said that if you look at several sports, I think one of them quoted was swimming, that when it comes to swimming, there's definitely, when you look at the world records and the fastest times and stuff, most of those world records and fastest times have been set late afternoon and early evening. And apparently that was related to some of those, aspects you mentioned, not just the resting heart rate, but also the core body temperature, because as a swimmer, you're in the water, you need to be able to activate your muscles. So that was beneficial. But what about like training late? Because you did say something which I can kind of relate to, which is your need for sleep. Because of course, when you're exercising and you're exercising particularly intensively, your body temperature goes up. However, to get off to sleep, we need to actually reduce our body temperature. So what would be your recommendations there in terms of, when should people put away the bike, not be training, in terms of the hours before sleep? Or are there any sort of quick hacks to cool the body down after training, getting into bed?
Probably the biggest thing, especially most of us after training, hit the shower.
Yeah.
So probably maybe a little bit of a cooler shower helped to bring the core temperature down. When we think about sleep hygiene, we're definitely thinking about a cool, dark room. So definitely lowering the temperature. And here in the States, depending upon what hemisphere you're in, I mean, we're waking up right now, let's say about 0 degrees Celsius. I'm not very good with my Celsius, so probably waking up right now.
I've been watching some of the election coverage, and the wind is howling, and there's even some snow, and it's cold. So I saw some.
So thinking about temperature in the room is definitely going to be help. Darkness, and then thinking about when do you turn off your computer, blue light. Definitely maybe getting your last meal in, because there was always that old wives' tale: if you eat late at night, you're going to gain weight. Well, we certainly demonstrate that that's not going to happen, and especially if you are training, odds are probably by the time you go to bed, let's say, most of us probably hit the bed at around 9, 10 o'clock at night. Maybe you get off the bike around 8 or so. You've got 2 hours to go through that dinner, shower.
Yeah, man, you're an early. You go to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock, man. That's not normal. I think most people listening, they're like 11 or 12 or something like that, probably getting off the bike at 10, but that good for you if you get that full 9 or 10 hours sleep. But it makes a lot of sense. I mean, for me personally, if I'm going to train late and I'm fully aware of the sleep hygiene stuff, I'll take not a cold shower, but definitely I'll take a cool shower to try to bring my body temperature down. But what about the opposite? Because I was talking to a guy working in the pro, kind of cycling world recently, and he said actually for when they have like early starts, sometimes they'll have a TT or something where riders have to go off early in the morning. They'll actually do the opposite. They'll get the guys to have a hot shower or even step into a sauna just for a few minutes to increase that body temperature, because it is very low in the morning. Would that make sense to you as well? I mean, he wasn't quoting any science, but he was saying this is something we're kind of aware of.
Right, because if you think about that warm-up period, getting ready for a TT, the big thing that we're going to be doing is getting the body ready. And how do we get the body ready? We got to get the blood, basically the blood pumping to the muscles. We need to, in order to do so, heart rate's going to increase. Core temperature increases, because if we think about the offloading of oxygen to the tissues, we do see, and I hate to use the scientific term, but we have a Bohr effect, which allows us to offload more oxygen to the muscle based upon a higher, or I should say lower pH, as well as an increase in body temperature.
Yeah.
So this warm-up period allows to do so. So going through kind of like one of our first talks, we talked about warming up.
Yeah.
Well, what if you're in a cold environment? There was a story about Lance Armstrong when he first started. He went racing in a winter area, I think somewhere in Texas or someplace like that, and he didn't warm up properly, but he actually sat in his car, turned the heater on, wore a lot of clothes to get his core temperature up in order to perform as his best. So that method might actually be of benefit, especially if it's going to be an early morning TT.
Okay, man, I'm hearing you, because I'm planning to do some cyclocross racing here in Belgium over the winter. But here in Belgium, most of the serious cyclocross people, they have the full-on mobile home, with the warm environment and everything. I don't have a mobile home, so I think I'll be like Lance. I'll be sitting with all my clothes on and with the heater blasting. But it makes a lot of sense. And actually, I saw actually I think it was a clip on YouTube talking about the British track team, and that was one of the kind of marginal gains that they discovered with the track riders 5-6 years ago was actually the fact that people were warming up and then they were sitting around in their shorts. And the British national team, they actually provided everyone with these special hot pants, like literally warmed pants, especially for the sprinters and the more power athletes, to keep the muscles really warmed up. So I guess we're talking about two things here. One is keeping in mind the time of the day, your core temperature. If you're going to be training early, then actually you need to put a bit more investment into warming up, raising up your core temperature to really get the most out, particularly if you're doing more intensive training. And then, of course, if you're coming to later in the day, it's almost the opposite. You're primed in a way for this kind of higher core body temperature. But if you do train too late and too hard, that temperature will stay up, and that's gonna affect your sleep. So it's a fine line. The other aspect of this, of course, is when we watch the Tour de France, we see the guys with the cooling vests on. And actually, I just got myself one this year. Didn't get a big chance to use it with all the races being cancelled. What's your view on those? I mean, I know we're a bit off topic with the time of day topic, but what about the cooling vests? In what sort of situations would you be really worthwhile to invest in something like that?
Well, the big thing again is looking at temperature, because if you look what's going on with the human body, normally 98.6 or 37 degrees Celsius is for us the normal temperature. But there is that zone that as we increase allows us to do better getting enzymes to work, offload oxygen. But if we go too warm, what's going to end up happening is we're going to start running into those problems. So the body gets up to 103, 104 degrees or so, 40 degrees Celsius, definitely going to be more optimal than being 105, 106 degrees, because that's kind of where we start to see the changes. So the vests will definitely help kind of keep you within that zone. They used to do a lot of slurry drinks, ice slurry drinks to kind of cool down also. Or you might even see, some people taking some stockings, putting some ice that's frozen water, kind of on their back to cool them down before if they didn't have ice vests. So again, that optimal temperature is going to be really, really important also.
Being rare, but I still have nightmares about, I competed at the World Grand Fondo, TT, in Albi in France back in 2017, and it was roasting. It was 37 or 38 degrees Celsius in the shade. And it was incredible on that day. I mean, for me personally, I was something like 30 watts below my PB on that course for the day. There were British guys, because the Australians and the British, for some reason, they kind of batched us together in the warm-up zone. We had some garages. The finish was at a race car track, and I mean, after the race, there were British guys actually like almost crying because their performance was so much worse than what they would expect in a normal kind of temperature. So it can have that big effect on you. Can you acclimatize to it though, Josh? Because if I look back, I think at that Grand Fondo Worlds in France, most of the guys who were in the top 10 were kind of Southern European. They were Spanish, Italian, Portuguese. Is it possible to acclimatize your body to that kind of heat, to still be able to perform at those temperatures?
You do, again, but it's going to be based upon the acclimatization. Usually takes a week to 10 days, especially if you're not from that location. I grew up in South Florida, hot, humid. We also lived in Arizona here in the States, extremely hot, no humidity. So you're looking at different types of environments, but over time you do get used to them. It does take some time, but you'll never get used to, let's say in Arizona, we had temperatures of 115 degrees on certain days, and I'd ride home from the office and literally,
that's over 40 degrees.
That's Celsius. A little too warm. That's closer
racing.
To almost 50 degrees Celsius, I think.
Yeah, listen, mate, I grew up in Australia in the bush, and in the summers we had these crazy high temperatures, but I've become more soft. I've been living in Belgium for too long. Now I'm a real wimp. I can't handle the heat anymore. So it happens to all of us. Josh Miller, as always, a fascinating conversation. Thanks for all the inputs. We've covered time of day for training. We've covered lots of stuff related to body temperature and how you optimize that and manage for extremes of heat or cold. So hope that was interesting for everyone. If you have liked the video, of course, please do give us the thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the This Cycling Life YouTube channel.